What's up? Welcome to the podcast. This episode we're chatting, Dean and I have just been deep in this intentional creative conversation to begin with. We're so in this relationship within our own life and ourselves in the past few years. Even we've just been talking about it and trying to figure out how to be intentional with our creativity and how to not like slip into the algorithmic and trendy vortex that is social media. And so this is just now kind of coming alive in the podcast form, and we're having fun with it and just letting it flow, letting it come through. And so this podcast is, what do I make content about? That's what we decided, right?
Yeah, that's a big question.
What do I make content about? What do I make content about? What do I make content for? And yeah,
there's so many nuances to that as well.
There's
like
so many nuances.
You could even ask like, how do I make the content? Like, what almost type of content do I make? Because like, there's obviously so many different ways to tell the same story, to do the thing that you're doing. So, yeah. But I think if we stick to the main question of what do I make content about, I think, so for me, when I started social media, I started making content about the things that I was doing in real life. I was going on adventures with my friends and documenting, recording, creating from that. But slowly, as social media became a bigger part of my life, I started creating for social media and making content about social media. And not that you can't do that, because that in itself is content and like can be valuable. Yeah. I mean, we're doing that right now. We are making content about content. So it's kind of meta in that sense. But I think that's the trap that you need to be careful of if you are getting on social media. Don't necessarily create for social media, but as we've said in the last podcast, is like, do the thing that you're doing in real life and then document that.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that where you're centering in within yourself about your creative process is like a huge point here, in the sense of like you're saying, back in the day when both you and I maybe were in the content creator world and exploring that space, I slipped into creating content for the sake of creating content, and because the algorithm needed a post every day. And so I was just kind of forcing things. I was forcing things out of myself. I was forcing ideas out of myself, forcing creative output through my energy. And it became something where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't like this anymore. I don't like this outlet. I don't like this process. I don't like what I'm doing. There was this really deep self-hatred for myself and the creative process, which I hate, and I want to protect that. I want to protect that space within my creative expression. How can I protect that area around my heart of being a creator and being somebody who is putting intentional, heartfelt thought into something I want to say, something I want to express? And so I think that's the biggest thing that I've come to realize after being in that space of creating for the algorithms or creating for social media, recognizing and pulling back and saying, hold on, wait, why am I here in the first place? What am I actually doing this for? This is for me and my creative release, my creative expression, my creative artistic thoughts and things that want to come through, and centering there first. And then the question of like, what do I make content about becomes a little bit more interesting. You can take your time with it. You can be a little bit more in your own inner state. You can let things come through to you. What is feeling inspired? Life takes us through all these journeys. And so what are you feeling inspired by in one part of your life is not going to be the same thing you're going to feel inspired by in the next part of the life. And so, yeah, how are you keeping that creative inspiration alive? By not forcing the content just because the algorithm or Mark Zuckerberg needs you to post consistently.
I think you mentioned starting with why, like coming back to your why. There was a book that I read a couple of years ago by, I want to say it's Simon Sinek, but I'm not sure right now, so don't quote me on that, but it's called Start With Why. That was probably one of the best books that I've read on creativity, on business. It was a business and marketing book, but it was really, excuse me, it was really just really coming back to the why. Like, why are you doing this thing? Because that's the most important thing. That's the reason that you're here. That's why people are following you. So if you ever feel yourself getting lost and veering off the path of your journey as a content creator, as a creator, as a creative, you've got to come back to that why. Why are you here? Why are you doing this? And that's what you need to be making content about. So for me, I've revisited this why many times, and it's kind of redefined my creative journey in a lot of ways. And when I started, it was to inspire people to get outside and explore their own city with my series, The Weekend Venture. Like, it was all about these travel vlogs in my own city and inspiring people to get outside and explore their own cities, their own countries, their own provinces, whatever it was. But I slowly lost that why as my journey went on, as I saw what was performing with the algorithm. And so I started making tutorials. I started answering questions that people were asking me, because I was making cool videos and people wanted to know how I was doing that. They wanted to know how I was editing my photos, how I was taking my photos. And so it's not a bad thing to start making those videos and answering those questions, because I think it is important to engage with your fans on that front and do answer the questions that they're asking. But that pulled me away from my why. That pulled me away from what I was doing in the first place, and I just got lost in the social media world, lost in the algorithm world of following the trends, following what was performing, and just completely forgot about why I started doing it in the first place. And that sent me on to doing a whole bunch of random things, like trying to start a financial TikTok at one point, like when it was the whole cryptocurrency spike in like 2021, and I was like, oh, I want to get on this train and make some money and like be a part of this, because I'm like, I'm good at producing video, I'm good at being on camera, I know how to do this stuff. And so I was like, I can just be a face and a voice to this conversation, and bring high quality production to it. I don't specifically need to know all the facts. I can do the research, I can gather information and just present it as this cohesive package and make a ton of money from it and gain a following. But I'm like, what? That had nothing to do with my beliefs, like nothing to do with my values. And so I look back at that now, I'm like, why did I do that? I think it was an important part of the journey for me to get to that point, to be like, Dean, what are you doing here? Why are you doing this? You are creating stuff that you don't care about for no reason, literally just to make money and get followers. And I went and like archived a lot of that stuff on my TikTok, but it was really like embarrassing to look at that and be like, what are you doing? And so after that, I really just like took a long break from social media, and I was like, I need to take a step back. Yeah, I know. I didn't tell anyone about it because it kind of was embarrassing, because I didn't believe in it. I didn't want to share it. I wasn't like proud of it necessarily. I was just hoping that the algorithm would pick it up and like blow it up. So it wasn't a good stage of my creative journey. But once I took that step back and I was like, okay, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And it took me a very long time to figure that out. And I made like videos here and there, but it took probably about 2 years from that point, where after making just like random videos and figuring out like, okay, I do want to make more intentional content. I do want to help people grow emotionally, spiritually, like find themselves and connect with themselves again, because that was the process that I went through. And so that was the content I started making again. And then slowly that led me back to the whole reason that I started content creation in the first place, was inspiring people to get into nature again. And so it's only been in like the past, I don't know, 2 months probably, where I've really honed in on my why and the reason that I'm doing this, and that's to help humans remember their connection to nature again, help people reconnect to nature and themselves being a part of nature, reconnecting to themselves, reconnecting to the earth, because I believe that's where the healing comes from. That's where the truth is, that's where the beauty is, that's where everything is. So that's kind of my mission now, that's my journey, and so that's what I'm making content about. So I think for anyone listening, if you can find that, and you're not going to find that by scrolling through Instagram, you're going to find that by being by yourself, by disconnecting, by going into the woods, taking a long walk on the beach, by journaling, by sitting down and really thinking about your life, thinking about your values, thinking about what you care about, thinking about how you want to see this world, and what value you can bring to this world, that's where it comes from. It doesn't come from the algorithm's not going to tell you what. I mean, I guess it'll tell you what's going to be successful, but it's not going to tell you what your why is. Yeah.
Right. That's the whole thing you did with the crypto thing of like going on to TikTok and starting this whole crypto thing that wasn't. It wasn't coming from a true place within you. Whether or not maybe even later down the line you get back into the same thing, promoting crypto or figuring out how to help people navigate
possibly,
it,
but it's from a whole different perspective.
Right. It's from a whole different perspective of like, I'm doing this because now I'm really grounded in who I am and how I show up creatively, and I see this now as a vital part of whatever's going on in the global sphere of things. So centering in that why and in what, like what is real for you, what is alive in you, what is true for your system, and making sure that that's what's coming through, that's the content that you're making, and that's what you're centered in within yourself before the content conversation gets online. And I mean, I think there's a part to say about this where like both you and I had to take a lot of steps back from creating.
Sure. I was going to add to this point in the sense where I think this realization comes with age and maturity as well.
Yep.
It comes with life and learning about life. Like we said, it's all connected, and art is an imitation of life. It is your journey, your reflections, your perspective of life is what you are creating. And so I guess that's another question is like, for somebody that's 18 years old and wants to become a filmmaker, photographer, content creator at this point, what would you say to them what to make content about?
Are you asking me right now?
Yeah, I'm asking you. What would you tell yourself when you were 18 and you started making travel vlogs from this perspective?
I think I would remind myself to ask the question of what do I like? What do I like? Like some sort of question, and I'm not having clarity on like maybe what direct question that would be, but like what is going to center you? What makes you light up? What makes you happy? Like centering the conversation around me, the 18-year-old Jackson, versus Instagram, the profile, the followers, right? Like that was the focus. That was the attention point. That was
and the focus was also the future.
The future.
Your focus was on like being this big YouTuber, being this big star. So like, I mean, same for me. Like, didn't ever live in the present moment.
Right.
I wasn't like, what do I like right now? What do I want to do right now?
What am I enjoying right now? What am I like just having fun with right now in this moment? And it's funny too, like a lot of this stuff and a lot of the trips that I was on, there was like this underlying stress within me that was my own. It was my mind so focused in the future and where I wanted to be that I couldn't enjoy the fact that I was in some really beautiful, cool places right then. Mm-hmm. And so reminding myself to stay in that conversation, in that question of like, what am I enjoying? What do I want? And like you said, you know, this is also an age thing. It's when you're young. I remember being young and I had so much energy, I had so much momentum, I had so much forward moving of a vision. I wanted to change the world. I still want to change the world, but it's a lot more grounded now because I understand the kind of maneuverability of life and how you need to work with it, how you need to work with yourself through it. Human things happen. Human things move through us and happen. Like, you know, we have to go through these experiences of highs and lows.
And we also change as people. Our interests change. Right. So I don't think it's a bad thing to... You don't have to pick something and stick with that for the rest of your life. Like, your values will change as you grow. Right. So something that is super important to you, like... I don't know, take for example crypto. That definitely wasn't my passion, but for someone it might be your passion at that moment in time. That might be your biggest focus, your biggest interest. So I don't think it's a bad thing to explore and create around different topics, because that's how you're going to find out if you actually care about that thing. Yeah.
Well, and maybe this is the question we're asking. What do I make content about? But I'm asking it to my 18-year-old self. Like how would I would tell the 18-year-old version of me what to make content about, like in the sense of like what would I tell the 18-year-old version to switch into and make content about. And now how I'm thinking about the question is like both of those questions is like, you know, what are your passions? What do you love? You love to travel, you love to hike, you love to be outside, you love to be camping, that kind of thing. Make content about the things you enjoy. Make content about the things that are easy for you. Make content about the things that come naturally to you. Make content about the things that feel exciting to you.
Yeah.
Don't use the external barrage of influencers and Instagram and social media to tell you what to be excited about, what to be interested in, what to be engaged in. Your audience will come if an audience is to come to you. The audience will happen. The audience will show up, and
every audience exists. It's
every
just
audience
about
exists,
finding
100%. And it'll show up quicker if you're centered in just being excited about what the heck you're doing. Like, it will show up faster for you if you're just like, in the sense of, like, for me, like, I look back and I'm like, I was trying to force an audience into my life.
Yeah,
but I wasn't actually centered in the things that I enjoy and the things that make me happy. I was just grabbing at all the kind of attention.
It was a neediness energy. I mean, same for me. It was like,
which pushes it away.
Yeah, I wasn't just being myself, making the things I wanted to do and attracting the people that actually enjoyed my content. I was out there chasing followers, chasing an audience, making stuff to be like, hey world, look at me, here's this thing that I'm making for you, please come watch this and then follow me, even though I don't actually like making this thing. Or
if even if I'm just, this is a drag, but I'm doing it because I'm getting this massive dopamine rush.
And then I think even that energy, that neediness energy, translates through your work as well, through your presence on camera, through your presence in the edit, whatever you're doing. It shows that
it turns it off.
Yeah, and I think that's like, you pick that up. A good example is like when you see YouTubers that in the first 5 seconds is like, hey guys, how's it going? Make sure you subscribe and you like this video. It's like, I haven't even watched the video yet. It's like, what?
I don't know if I like it.
So I think like that's that almost neediness energy that you can just pick up from people. I mean, some people might not be as attuned to it, but I've definitely become more attuned to that, especially within myself. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel like as reliant, as needy on an audience anymore to validate who I am, because I'm going to do this stuff regardless of if I'm filming it or not. So
exactly. Like, what are you already excited about? What can you go do with or without the camera, and you're going to feel stoked on it? And just how do you document it? How do you document that and create a funnel of creation that can come through for you in that in the social media space, in the whether that be on whatever platform you're on. So and I think that you'll be able to find your own the neediness thing, more than anybody else. Like, you can feel that in yourself, and that's like a good barometer of where you're at and where you're coming from in the sense of what you're putting out. Are you feeling needy about putting out some sort of content because you're wanting attention, or is it feeling grounded in just your rhythm, your flow, your expression? Where is it coming from within yourself? And you're the only person who can really like know that fully. But it's just a nice barometer to have, and a nice space to kind of come from. And then, like you were saying, like if you're 18 and maybe you don't know exactly what you want to do yet, we don't know maybe what your expression is yet. I think Dean and I both had a really good awareness of that when we were younger, of like how we liked to show up and how we liked to engage with the world. But I think that trying and exploring all sorts of varieties of things, paint, do some drawing. I've been drawing a ton lately. Drawing's not my forte at all, but I've just been enjoying the process of drawing. I've been learning tradesmanship crafts, going out and beginning to learn like electrical and doing more outdoor handyman things. Like, that's been a super fun creative project for me. Running, biking, like being physical in some sort of ways, doing yoga, like all of these are creative outlets. Sewing, crocheting, right? Like everything that is done in a production kind of way. It's not just digital, it's not just in this digital landscape. And I think that's an important thing to think about too. Like, make content about the physical things that you're doing, that you're keeping you centered in your life. Make content about the physical things that you're activated in your life. Again, you're just documenting. You're documenting your creative path, your creative expression, your creative exploration. And it can kind of be like, I was talking to a friend this morning actually about how there's those movies, where people are stranded somewhere, like the Martian. He's up on Mars and he doesn't have anybody around him. He's just by himself, but he's doing these like daily logs. He's talking about, okay, today the weather was like this, and today, you know, the sun didn't rise for longer than I expect. I don't know, whatever he's talking about, and his experience with Mars. It's kind of in the same way, the same thing. It's a way more fun because you're not in a life or death situation necessarily, but you can be in that kind of relationship with yourself of like taking notes, taking tabs, and like, man, my creativity was feeling blocked today. You know, you could even use it as a conversation about yourself. Like, man, I was really in my yoga flow today, but was feeling some stuff come up in this.
Well, it's a tool for self-discovery. I think that's what creativity is. Creation is. It's a tool for self-discovery. But I think it's when that gets distorted, where, again, it's chasing the algorithms, where you stop using it to discover yourself, to doing the things that you want to do, to creating the things that you want to do. That you start losing touch with yourself and your own creations, and ultimately your whole platform, your whole audience that you've built, because then people can sense that and pick that up, that you don't actually care what you're making in the first place, and so they'll stop watching, they'll stop engaging, because you don't have that same passion anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually have another question.
Content for self-discovery.
So there's another t-shirt right there. We're gonna have a giant merch line. I still stay juicy,
but it's gonna be so dope. Everything's gonna be amazing. People are gonna be loving it. Make content for self-discovery. So okay, we've established that. Sorry, we've established that you need to make content about the things that you actually care about in life, the things that you like doing. So the next question is, what specifically, like what parts of life do you capture? Which parts do you choose to capture? That's a good clarification.
Because it's like, sometimes you just want to be in those moments and you don't necessarily want to capture them. So how do you choose which parts of your life, which parts of your journey to capture? Like, what do you make content about when you do know what you're making content about? So for example, me, I want to make content about hiking. So do I make content about the prep work for the hike? Do I make content about just the actual hike? Do I make content about after the hike, about how I felt about it, my thoughts on it, my reflections? Do I make content on the stories of that hike? Do I make content on how I was feeling during that hike? Do I make content of just an objective view of that hike? So like, there's so many different paths that you can choose around the same thing that you're telling. So then it's like, okay, well, what do I do then?
Where do I center myself in how I release and produce the content that I would want to create? I think how I would think about that is, it's funny. It actually what's coming up in my mind is literally the title of the podcast, Intentional Creativity. So in the sense of all of those parts of the experience are relevant, that all the questions that you just asked in the sense of what do you do with the different elements of the hike process of creating, all of those questions are relevant. All of those questions may not feel like, what do you feel inspired to create that day? What do you feel inspired to create through? Do you want to do you want to just be on the hike by yourself that day, and you just want to go hike and just be with your own energy and not have to worry about anything? You just want to be in your head, in your heart, whatever. So maybe you make the content. Again, if you make content at all, because obviously I totally support just going to hike.
That's actually another point that I had. We can speak about that later. Like, just doing the things because you like it.
Just go do it because you like it, and stay and make sure you're still doing that in your life. But I think then, today, okay, I've got more time in the morning to do a bunch of prep work, and I can throw up the camera, record it, do a time lapse or documenting the process of me prepping the thing, and then do either a voiceover or talk to the camera and do some B-roll stuff. Just capture that experience of you putting things together in your bag, prepping yourself to go on this hike. Depending on obviously how long it's going to be, you'll need different things. And then that's that, and then that's good. And again, it's this creative process of just navigating, at least in the sense of how I feel about it and how I think about it, is that it's a creative process for me to just be in the process of like what my body is speaking to me. What does my body want? What kind of creation do I want to put out today? Have I been in the creative mode too much? Do I need to just like let myself chill, pack my bag and go on my hike and don't worry about nothing, and talk about it maybe when I get back, talk about the things that were coming up for me or what I was thinking about. That's how I think about it right now and approach it. And I think how I feel about that is that the more you work with this muscle, in the sense of you're just in your life doing your thing, capturing moments along the way, once you work with that muscle more, you'll more deeply build a relationship with how to create the content that you like to create, in the sense of what does your creative expression want to look like in that creation, and B, you'll have more of a relationship with what feels good to create, what feels easy to create, what feels natural for you to create. You are, again, the best barometer for your own creative process, to tell you what is needed to be created and how it needs to be created.
And that just comes through practice and doing it and experimenting and seeing what works for you. I think just going off of that point as well. So for example, how you will use the setting up for the hike as the example of me packing my bag, and do I record that? Say for example, my main intention is to make a video about the hike, like me actually doing the hike. But then there's all these little add-ons, like preparing for the hike. So I think you got to ask yourself a couple questions. The first thing is this aligned to me and my purpose and my why? And so again, we'll use my why, like helping humans to reconnect with nature. Is this aligned? Yeah, I would say so, because it's helping people prepare to get outside. So that's a check. And then the second is, do I have the capacity to do this right now? Do I feel emotionally, physically, spiritually in the zone to be doing this thing? And if that answer is no, if you're feeling too tired, if you're stressed out, if you don't have the time, like if you're rushing to get somewhere, or you got to catch a flight to the airport or whatever it is, then no, don't film that. It's not necessary if that's not the main thing that you're doing. Obviously, if your main thing is prep work for hiking, like that's your whole channel, then of course you make the time for that. But if it's not, then don't stress about it. So I think it's like, are you feeling it? Do you have the time? Do you have the energy? And if you answer yes to all those questions, then yeah, go for it. And then don't stress about it too much and making it super high quality, because at the end of the day, people just care about the information. They care about the story, the passion behind it. It's not necessarily the quality of it. So yeah, and I think that would be my answer. I think that's great. And I think I like that questions of checking in with yourself before you create, or something like that. Like, have a couple questions to just do a little check-in. How am I feeling? Do I feel in this? And this comes with, is this going to add too much stress for my day? Yeah, I think it comes with self-awareness as well, which is also a practice thing of knowing your body and your mind. Like, I didn't know how I was feeling at 18. Like you're definitely more in tune with your emotions than I am. But I didn't know how to regulate them, or didn't know how to like deal with it. I was just feeling so much of it, and how to listen to it and ask those questions and check in with myself. I didn't know how to do any of that. Yeah. Maybe I have more emotional, like sensory attunement, but I was in the same boat in the sense of not knowing what to do with that information. And so that just comes with time and practice, and making the time for yourself, again, away from social media, by journaling, by meditating, by knowing what's going on in your mind and checking in with yourself. How am I doing right now? What is happening in my life? What am I thinking about constantly? What is important to me? Right. Well, and this is a cool way that creativity actually shows up for you in that inner journey. Like, in the sense of like creativity, I feel like has really been the biggest catalyst for me in my life, as to like developing and building a relationship with myself, my needs, my desires, my shadows, the light in me. Like, it's been the biggest catalyst for me to like have these conversations and actually begin to look at them and figure out how to balance them and figure out how to keep things in a healthy, grounded. It's the tool for self-discovery. It's a tool for self-discovery a lot. Yeah, it really is. I'd also like to say, and something I was thinking when you were saying, like, what parts of your life do you want to capture? I think that, again, I'm trying to remind myself to think in the way of somebody who doesn't have a good relationship with film and photo and documentation. Like, so if I've got something that I do consistently, how do I even begin to deal with the questions of how to document that, or how to create that space? And I think that I just wanted to drop this in there for those people who may be having that question right now.
and just to have this be part of the conversation of how to do stuff like this is, you know, if you're doing something, or if you're in the process of creating something, you're going on this hike, or you're, you know, creating something with your hands, like, make it as simple as possible for yourself in the quote unquote documentation of it. Mm-hmm. Don't think about creating necessarily too intensely. Don't think about, you know, too many things outside of just that process that you're in. You know, set your phone down on a flat piece of surface and get yourself in the shot and record yourself. Like, that's it. Like, that's all you do. Mm-hmm. Whether you do a time lapse, whether you do video, like, you know, you can make that decision as the more you do it. But again, just to start this process and to begin that relationship with yourself in the visual creative journey, just start hitting record. Just start capturing it. It does not have to be perfect. It does not need to be, go watch some of my earlier stuff. Like, it was all, you know, it was all over the place in the sense of like what I was trying to do and how I was trying to create it. But again, to get good at anything, you got to practice. And
on that as well, I think there's another question of like, you don't have to capture everything in your life. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I even get hung up on sometimes. Is like, okay, well, there are some things that are cool and that I want to be sharing, but also I want to keep some things for me. And I think, because there's so much on social media now, and we have such a broad spectrum of people that we consume. Mm-hmm. Some of them are showing the most intimate details of their life. Some of them are showing just the highlights of their life. And so we can often get confused and be like, okay, should I be doing this? Like, we're constantly comparing as humans because we want to grow and we want to be better and we want to learn. And so especially if you're like trying to grow on social media, you're looking at other people and you're like, wait, should I be sharing my breakfast? And it's like, no, you don't have to. If that's not your thing, then you don't have to show your breakfast. Obviously you can if you want to, but again, is it aligned? Yeah. Do you feel like doing it?
And using it as that tool of like self-reflective process of like, does this feel good for me? Does this feel like it's a healthy thing for me to express? Does this feel like it's something that would feel healthy for me to share, or good for me to share? Does that land well in my emotional system? Is my body resisting this, or is my body enjoying this? And helping that be a barometer to check in with yourself as to like what you document, what you create, what you actually put out to the world.
Yeah. That's and important. Then even on that as well, like going back to capturing the things that you like doing anyway and that you're in flow with. Also, by the way, I wanted to add, for anyone that doesn't know when we were referring to flow, so I actually included in my university research article, there's a professor in, I can't remember where he is, but his name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember where he's from, somewhere in Eastern Europe, might be Russia, but he's a professor on creativity, and he came up with this concept of flow. And the flow state is basically, if you're creative and there's something that you love doing, you've probably experienced that. Even if you're an athlete, if you're a musician, it's the state you're in where you forget time and space. You can just get like zoned in and forget about everything in the world around you. You forget to eat, you forget to sleep, you forget, you're just so in focus with that thing. So yeah, that is flow for anyone that doesn't know. But going back to capturing your flow state, I don't think you have to do this all the time as well. I don't think it's good to do it all the time as well. Like if I was to do this, capture my flow state of being outside every single time I went outside, that would take away the experience of just actually being in that space for me. So there's times where I do it, like once a week I'll record myself, record my video, being outside, doing my thing, but I still go on hikes, I go out in the woods, I do other things outside and I don't record it, because that's actually the thing that I'm trying to teach to people. The thing that I'm trying to get across is like, go be outside, go be immersed in nature with the earth. And so if I constantly have a camera there, I'm not doing the thing that I'm telling people to do. I'm not doing the thing for myself that I want to do.
Right.
So it's a balance, and then like learning that balance as well, and checking in with yourself. How have you felt that with capturing the things that you do, and like where's the line of what you choose to capture and what you don't? Because you even do that sometimes when you're journaling, you'll just throw on a time lapse.
Yeah.
So how do you choose when to do it?
I really enjoy very raw, authentic documentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think of my documentation as like a journalism thing, or almost like a street photography thing. Like I'm just doing my thing, and there's also a camera there capturing me. And I've obviously definitely built a relationship with that, but it's one of those things, I think, for myself that spending the time in the creative process is the first and foremost thing that I think that I would have to, like, spend the time in the creative process, spend the time in your creative flow, spend the time in your creative work, and then using the documentation as a mirror space for yourself. You know, you're mirroring yourself back to yourself, in the sense of, like, as soon as the time lapse is done, I can look at myself and see how I was breathing that morning, or see how distracted I was during my meditation.
Yeah.
You know, and it really is, it brings up, you know, in the thoughts of insecurity, and thoughts of, like, fear, and thoughts of, like, wow, who do I think I am to be recording just my whatever daily routine or daily practice. And you know, again, for me, it just comes back to this thing of, like, I'm just documenting my journey. My life has been a journey. It's been crazy. It's been really all over the place in a lot of ways. And I think for most creatives, and for most creative people, for most humans, especially these days, it's all over the place. There's so much happening. There's so much emotional stimulation happening, and having a kind of a feedback loop for yourself to see where you're at, to see how in flow you are, to see what kind of grooves you're finding yourself in your process of whatever that is. That does not just mean creative, like emotionally, physically.
So you're almost using social media as a public journal for yourself.
It's 100% a public journal for me in all sorts of ways. And I'm still trying to navigate that with my, like, photography stuff, but even still, it still is a public journal in the sense of, like, just journaling and releasing in the flow that it's in. What I'm capturing, what I'm working with, but it is 100% a public journal, and that's how I think about it, in a sense. And I just actually I rewrote my bio for my YouTube channel, and I actually talk about this and mention this, that I'm pulling it up now, that it's just an observation for me. Like, I'm literally just using it as an observation for myself, and I'm using it as a space of a meditation, a creative release, and an observation. And
I like that.
Let's see. Yeah, it's to document the love, the relationships, the experience that are always changing throughout my life. So using it as this space of, like, you know, life is moving. It's mobile for all of us. We are all part of nature, and in nature, things move, things change, things grow, things die, things are born, things move on. You know, how can I just be capturing and visualizing that process of death and rebirth in my life as much as I can?
So then,
and I think that's the engagement, right? There's engagement in that, right? The question is how to make engaging content. It's really finding that edge of recognizing that your life is the engaging. You are the engager. You are the engagement. In the sense of, you know, we're all having these unique experiences that are different from everybody else. And no matter how bland or boring you might think it is, it's a whole different experience. It's a whole different experience from you or from me or whoever. And so, you know, your life, and the more you can kind of think about that in that way of, like, it's really an inner relationship and an inner journey, and just kind of following that as you grow with documenting the path, it creates that opening into engaging content, at least in my experience and how I feel about it.
So from a bit of a different perspective, I think it also depends on, again, what your intention is with social media. So if you are trying to make it a business, if you're trying to earn a living from it, then maybe that path, not that it can't work or it doesn't work, but that path might not be the most effective path in terms of growth and monetization and all that kind of stuff. Again, not necessarily playing into the algorithms, but if you're trying to support yourself with your creativity, then you might have to take a bit of a different approach where... So for me, for example, I really want to make my social medias. It hasn't been for a long time. It was when I was playing the whole YouTube game. It was my full-time income, and then I stopped and gave it up, and now I'm in the process of rebuilding. And especially with my new values and new focus, I would really like this journey to support me in my life and my creativity. So I'm approaching it as, yes, it's still a documentation of my journey and my life, but at the same time I'm also like, how can I help people through what I'm doing, and almost create it like more focused on the viewer. Not that I'm like chasing viewer, but I'm like, okay, how can I help you? It's what we're doing with the podcast right now. Like we're answering specific questions. It's not just us talking about our lives.
Right.
But within this, we're still giving our experiences and our conversations and our values.
And this is documenting our journey still.
It is, yes.
It is.
Exactly.
We're in this space of, oh my gosh, how can I serve now? Yeah. And that, in this space of like expressing and talking and moving through these ideas.
Yeah, so you might also be in a different stage where, for example, you might be in more of a self-discovery, explorative phase, where I'm more in a create to serve phase, but still we're both doing the same thing, just in different like stages of the process, possibly. So yeah, I think you can do both, but it really just comes back to your intention. Like, are you trying to make a living from social media?
Right.
What is social media for? Are you specifically?
Am I? Yeah, 100%. And when it's funny you're saying this, like I'm definitely moving back into that space of like, okay, was in that self-exploration journey, documentation, observation space, and I that's just definitely a part of who I am, maybe more so than others. And so like I think that's a huge aspect and element of my my creative process. But I'm definitely moving now back into this place of like, okay, let's rebuild some professionalism, let's rebuild some really good, grounded, solid expressive content to help clients and help work come through, to help that be grounded. But now the intention is different now. I'm not doing it for the publicity or the clients or the money. I'm doing it for myself still, but I'm just like, well, I have these skills, like I'm going to utilize these skills and utilize this creative expression and continue to refine this story, continue to refine the story of creativity, continue to get this message out there, right? It's a service for myself and for the world around me, because it is centered here. It's centered in my own experience and my own process of
I think it's when you can combine all those things, that's the magic. And the Japanese actually have a philosophy on this called ikigai, which let me see if I can remember it. It's what you're good at, what you can get paid for, what you love doing, and what the world needs. If you can combine those four, that's what you need to be doing. And I believe I found that for me. I believe even this podcast is that like they can be different versions of that thing. So my YouTube channel, my social media is helping people connect to nature. This podcast is helping people be intentional about creativity. Both passions that I absolutely love, and both things that I feel serve me, serve the planet, something I could possibly make money off in the future, and something that I'm good at doing. And so if I have all those four things, then why not express myself through those mediums?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, and again, it comes back to, engaging content stems from intentional creativity within yourself, like intentional creativity from yourself, in the sense of you're being intentional about why and what you're doing. You're aware and conscious of the things that light your soul on fire and allow your soul to come alive. Intentional creativity, that is going to breathe and birth engaging content, because you're centered in yourself and you're grounded in your life force, you're grounded in your expression, you're grounded in your rhythm. All great athletes, great painters, great artists, they're grounded in their rhythm. They're just kind of letting it through them. And so being intentional with the creativity, intentional with the self and the relationship with the self, is going to create that engaging content that you can find your rhythm with and find your flow with, which is going to look different for everybody, but is there. And it's just about that, in developing that inner relationship with what works for me, what is needed for me, what is exciting for me, asking those questions and allowing those to come online.
I think possibly a last point is that if you're listening to this, chances are you probably are in the content creation space, in the social media space, and you want to be in the space. But I think it's important to note that not everyone is meant to be a content creator. Not everyone has to be a content creator. I think nowadays there can almost be this pressure for certain people that they need to be a content creator because they see everyone is doing it. And that's great about social media, that it gives everyone access to be a creative, to be, I hate the word influencer, but to be a positive influence on life. And people see other people doing it, just documenting their life, documenting their story, and they're like, oh, why can't I can do that? Let me just do that. But you don't need to. At the end of the day, social media isn't a natural thing. Like, putting yourself out there for the world to see isn't really natural. Like, back in the day, even not even 20 years ago, like, you couldn't do this. You were confined to your own local communities, your own family, your own friends, and that's healthy. That's normal. That's okay. So if you try this out and it's not working and it doesn't feel right for you, then you don't need to feel pressured to keep forcing it, to keep trying it. Obviously for me and Jackson, like, we've been doing this for 10 years now and we are still passionate about it, so it does align with us, but it's not going to align for everybody, especially for people that aren't necessarily visually creative, that aren't into video and photo, which is the platforms that are dominant now.
Build that relationship with your purpose. Build that relationship with your own purpose. And that, at the end of the day, is what should be guiding you and pointing you in the direction of where you need to go and where you need to land.
I also think you can still create massive impact on the world and your communities with no social media presence at all. I got taught this lesson pretty harshly. I thought this was still when I was like pretty big in social media and like on YouTube and making filmmaking tutorials and like getting tons of views, and so my ego was really inflated, and I got invited to a Red Bull photography training camp in California, and I went down there and everyone like had to introduce themselves and the work they did, and so I put together this like really cool presentation, and I was like, this is what I do. I make travel videos, I make photo tutorials, like I know what I'm doing. I'm the shit, basically. And everyone else introduced themselves with like subpar PowerPoint presentations. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm cool. And at the time, like, I thought, like, if you made it on social media, you'd made it. Up comes this guy that he was coming to give a lecture and be a teacher and like teach us his lessons. He was a Red Bull photographer, like an in-house Red Bull photographer that had been doing it for like 40 years. He showed us his work, phenomenal, like one of the best photographers I've ever seen, going to some of the most remote locations in the world, like super hard places to get to, taking shots of athletes doing the most insane things, and
which is athletic in and of itself to go in those spaces and in those roles.
And I look at his social media afterwards and he has 200 followers. He, like, his photos on social media were very subpar, like he didn't post his best things, and yet he was one of the most successful photographers in the world. And that was the lesson where I was like, oh, actually the people that are the most successful in the world don't even give a shit about social media because they're too busy doing the thing that they're actually good at doing. And so that taught me a lesson where I was like, oh, don't judge people based on their social media as well, because you never know what they do outside of that. So you don't, moral of the story is, you don't need to be on social media to be successful. Obviously he started his career before social media was a thing, so it was a little bit different, but I still don't think that you necessarily need social media to make it in any industry nowadays. Like, sure, it helps and it definitely adds to your portfolio, but
maybe
if it's not for you, you don't need it.
And maybe don't put all your eggs in that basket. Don't bank on it, right? Be developing skills outside of it. Be working in a physical ways outside of it, be helping build community, be helping build, authentic creative outputs in your real life as well. Like, do that in parallel.
And ask yourself, like, what can I give? I think that's really important. I think in today's Western capitalistic world, it's all about what can I take as much as possible. What can I get? As this like scarcity mindset. But if you really break it down to what we're good at, what nature is good at, is like, what can I give? What can I offer? And if your gift is photography, do that. If your gift is video, if your gift is social media, presenting yourself on social media, if your gift is audio, speaking, podcasts, if your gift is farming, give your gift away. Like, that's what we're meant to do. I heard a quote the other day from I'm reading a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. I told you about it a while ago, but phenomenal book. I think it's one of my favorites. She said a quote in there, which is, your gift is your responsibility. I was like, wow, that stuck with me so much. Like, the thing that you're good at is what you need to give away. Yeah. Because that's what...
Give your light to the world.
That's what you've been blessed with, so give it out for free. And as long as you give, you get what you give. So you got to give first.
This is, I guess, this is a different direction of the conversation, but I'll mention it briefly. Like, you know, the energy you give out is what you get back. So you being grounded in your expression, your creative process, your creative release, no matter what or who is looking, is sending you're sending something out to the world. You're sending something out to the people around you, the communities around you, and no matter how long it takes, and no matter where you're at in your life, things come around. Things will come back to you. Things will move to you. Find that rhythm with yourself. Don't worry about everything else.
It's happening. It's all happening right now. Yeah, I'm feeling good. I think this is
really grounded after this conversation.
Yeah, that was a good one. I feel like we started off a little bit rocky. We were like, oh, what do we speak about? And then it just like flowed so nicely. And I think we did answer the question of what do I make content about.
I think there's so many like little nuggets in there of like the different kind of what does the content need to live about and live through.
Yeah.
And I think it helped. 100%.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening, whoever is listening to this. We're building up a little bit of an audience. I think we have 11 listeners right now, so that's awesome in 2 episodes. If you like this, please share it on your social media. Please rate it on Spotify as well.
Share it with other people who are in this question. Don't just share it because you're trying to share it. Share it with people who like directly are like in this conversation. We're not doing this to become anything in the podcast realm. We're doing this because we are asking these questions ourselves. We are asking these questions, and we're recognizing that these questions are being asked in the creative field as a whole. And so we're just hoping to stoke that fire of creative conversation. And so send it to your creative friends, and
we have a ton more questions as well. We actually go through like a list of questions that we have at the beginning of each episode and decide what we're going to talk about, and we have like 15 more questions, and that's just from like the past week of like thinking about what we're doing and where we want to go with this. So tons more conversations to be had. We really appreciate you listening to this. If you are listening to this, we will have links to my social media, Jackson's social media, other resources. Jackson made a really cool playlist on YouTube with videos that relate to what we're talking about as well, so we'll share that. Anything else you want to share? Anything else going on for you?
No, I think that feels good. I mean, it's cool to be in the conversation and to be helping to push the conversation forward. I think it's important. I think it's needed, and just sending love out to everybody out there and sending good creative juice and vibes for the projects that are being worked on.
I think it would be cool to have, if you're listening to this and you have any questions specifically,
DM us.
I think DM us, or I also think I might be able to leave like a question thing on Spotify where you can almost comment on it now. So I'm going to check that out. If that's available, let us know if you have any questions. And
whatever you're feeling through these
DM
conversations, what's feeling inspired of like, wait, what if we think about like this? Like, let us know.
It would be really cool to have questions from other perspectives as well, from people that are at different points in the journey. So if you have anything, please let us know. We'd love to have conversations about it. And I think that wraps it up.
Feels good for me.
Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Bye. Stay up, y'all.